In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Well, today is the feast then of Saint Bonaventure, Bishop, Confessor, and Doctor of the Church. Well, I have to relate a little story. When I was first ordained a deacon, this would have been a transitional deacon back in the summer of 2008, I went to Mexico for language immersion, and after a few weeks there, it was the feast of St. Bonaventure, and the priest said to me at the daily Mass, "Diacono, why don't you go say a few words?" So I wasn't prepared, and my Spanish wasn't very good, but I had the brilliant idea that I would take some writings of St. Bonaventure and just read them, because I had read a little passage from him that morning, and I thought, well, this is really good. So I got up to the pulpit, and I just read the words of St. Bonaventure. And I didn't know enough Spanish to say that I was reading his words rather than mine, but anyway, it just worked. Well, after Mass, a gentleman from the parish came up to me and he said, "Oh, Diacono, your words changed my life." And I thought, well, they were St. Bonaventure's words, and they were very good. But it just goes to show that we can't go wrong when we turn to the doctors of the church. We just can't go wrong when we turn to the doctors of the church. St. Bonaventure has his own way, his own way of writing, his own way of expressing himself. He was a great medieval philosopher and theologian. Well, let's take a look at the liturgical eulogy for St. Bonaventure from the Office of Matins. Bonaventure, born at Bagnorea in Tuscany, when a boy escaped unharmed from a deadly sickness by the prayers of Blessed Francis, to whose order his mother had dedicated him if he should recover. And on this account, while still a youth, Bonaventure begged to be admitted among the friars minor. He had as his master Alexander of Hales, and became in a short time so eminent in learning that, having taken a master's degree at Paris at the end of 7 years, he publicly explained the books of the sentences with great applause. And later on he also published excellent commentaries on the same books. He was distinguished not only for the profundity of his learning, but for the integrity of his morals, the innocence of his life, his humility, meekness, contempt of earthly things, and desire of heavenly treasures, and was fully worthy to be regarded as a model of perfection and to be called a saint by Blessed Thomas Aquinas, to whom he was united by ties of the closest friendship. So St. Thomas Aquinas was at the University of Paris as a Dominican, and St. Bonaventure was at the University of Paris as a Franciscan. For Thomas, finding Bonaventure engaged in writing the life of St. Francis, said, "Let us permit a saint to labor for a saint." He was consumed with the flame of divine love and had a special feeling of devotion to the passion of Christ the Lord, which was the subject of constant meditation to him, and to the Virgin Mother of God, to whose service he vowed himself. And this devotion he strove also to arouse in others, both by word and example, and he labored to spread it by his writings and treatises. And so came that sweetness of manner, grace of speech, and the charity which he extended to all, by which he completely and utterly conquered every soul. Now let's pause there for a moment and consider what devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary will do for your soul. If you have a true devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, you entrust yourself to her, you seek to be worthy of her honor. And this is where, I guess it was last month at Philosophy Night, we spoke about chivalry as it relates to Franciscan spirituality. That a gentleman would seek, and this applies to all of you, and it applies to me too, but a gentleman seeks to prove himself worthy for the lady that he admires. Maybe he doesn't even love her yet, but he admires her, and he wishes to prove himself worthy of her dignity. And so he'll go off on a quest or do something, to prove his virtue. And then she'll look at him, and she'll notice him if he proves his virtue to her. Well, we see this in the lives of the saints, and especially the monks and friars and priests who give Mary that honor of being the lady for whom they wish to prove their worth, to prove themselves that she would favor them. Now we can all think about this. What does that do for one's soul? For instance, if we make the 33-day preparation and we consecrate ourselves to the Blessed Virgin Mary, what will that do for your soul? Well, certainly it will improve your soul. It will improve your life by handing over all of your exterior and interior goods to her, for her to govern. Now that's what a husband does for his wife in the traditional vows of marriage. He hands to her not only the ring, but a piece of gold and silver, and he pledges all of his worldly treasures to her. And this is the reason why traditionally a bride or a young lady preparing to be a bride would study home economics. Because if her husband is going to hand over his worldly treasure to her, then she has to know how to manage the household and how to manage the finances of the household. And there's where you have that equity between husband and wife. So if we think about that, then handing over all of our interior and exterior goods to Mary so that she may govern them, and she may decide where to apply whatever merits we gain by our prayers and good works, well, Mary knows more than just home economics. She knows the economics of heaven, which is a very, very large home. So we think about that, the trust that a man needs to have toward Mary, which is reflected also by the trust that a man should have in his wife. This is why you have to choose the type of wife that you can trust to manage all your worldly treasures and to help you to get to heaven. All right, let's continue with St. Bonaventure. All right. Wherefore, when only 35 years of age, he was elected at Rome, by unanimous consent, Minister General of the Order, and having accepted the office, he fulfilled it for 18 years with admirable prudence and the recognition of his sanctity. He made many rules useful for regular discipline and the increase of the order, which, together with the other mendicant orders, he defended successfully against the calumnies of their enemies. Well, he was summoned to the Council of Lyon by Blessed Gregory X, and having been created Cardinal Bishop of Albano, he diligently performed a noted work for the Council in very difficult circumstances, in which the dissensions of the schism were composed and the dogmas of the Church vindicated. In the midst of these labors he died, to the great grief of all, in the 53rd year of his age, and in the year of salvation 1274. And his funeral was honored by the whole council and by the presence of the Roman pontiff himself. Pope Sixtus IV, after Bonaventure had become illustrious for many and great miracles, placed him in the list of the saints. He wrote many books in which the highest erudition and the fire of piety are so united as both to touch and instruct the reader. Sixtus V, on this account, worthily distinguished him by the name of the Seraphic Doctor. And there we have the liturgical eulogy of St. Bonaventure. Now, it is true that his works have the highest erudition and the fire of piety, and they are definitely worth reading. Now, he's a medieval philosopher as well as a theologian, and he writes in a very poetic way. but in a very ordered way that is characteristic of the medieval period. Well, I would definitely recommend that you pick up some works of St. Bonaventure. Think about all the things that you waste your time reading. We all waste our time reading a lot of worthless stuff. Now, if you were to start reading the Doctors of the Church, you'd never get through them. You'd never get through them. You'd never even make a dent. But you may as well get started anyway. And just look at the list of the Doctors of the Church and get started. Maybe try and read one work from each of them. And that will take you some time, but it'll be worth it. And then you can feel good about the things you're reading, rather than all the stuff that we all waste our time reading these days. I do want to recommend to you that you consider the novena to St. Anne that will begin this coming Saturday. The novena to St. Anne. She's the mother of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Now, when we talk about consecrating ourselves to the Blessed Virgin Mary, well, what happens when a man marries a woman? Well, it's not just a relationship between the man and the woman. It's a relationship between a family and a family. And so the parents and the grandparents and the siblings and the cousins are all involved. Well, so it is with Mary. So it is, if we are children of God, then we need to embrace His family. And if we consecrate ourselves to Mary, well, we need to honor her mother. We need to honor her son most of all. But we need to honor her mother and her father and her earthly spouse. And we need to get to know her many devoted children, all the saints who had devotion to her, all the popes who had devotion to her. And then we need to spread that devotion to Mary among others. Now that might make you a little uncomfortable, and that's a good thing. It's good to be a little uncomfortable, especially when we're talking about something good and worthy. It's difficult, so it's important, and it bears great fruit. When something seems a little daunting, that's the thing we need to conquer. That's the thing we need to go after, because it will bear so much fruit. If you have a true devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, it will bear so much fruit. If you imitate the saints, if you seek to have communion with the saints, well, that will increase communion with all the faithful on earth. It'll increase it. St. Bonaventure, what a great saint, embracing poverty and chivalry and truth and navigating through the difficulties of this and that. The friend of saints. And now we are celebrating his feast today, 800 years later. Well, it's only the beginning. Today is still just another beginning of a great and beautiful life of faith. You've already embarked upon this life, but it's still just the beginning. So it's time to dig in and get serious again. The summertime is a wonderful time. The days are long, plenty of time to get everything done. Enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the barbecue after our talk tonight, enjoy good company among you, and then go home and read a work of St. Bonaventure. And you won't be sorry. And then come back and tell me, "Oh, Father, those words changed my life." And they truly will. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.